Good afternoon, friends. Hello, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. What an exciting season it's been already, and you are in for a special treat tomorrow night with our masterpiece finale, Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. Thank you again for being here, and thanks again to the Laramie County Library for hosting all of these Lunch and Learn presentations. They've been a wonderful partner to the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. I am joined by two distinguished guests who will be featured at the concert tomorrow night. We are so pleased to welcome them both, Michelle Cann, the wonderful pianist, and Jeff Lippencott, our composer in residence. Please join me in welcoming them. Well, we have such a great program for you. Of course, so many people are so excited about Rhapsody in Blue. We all love it. We know it, we love it, and for good reason. And then there's also going to be another piano concerto, like Rhapsody in Blue. It's about that same time frame, about 17 minutes long. It's the Florence Price Piano Concerto in one movement. And I'm guessing to venture that maybe you haven't heard this one before. And you are in for such a treat. It is an amazing piece. It's got depth, it's got fun, it's got everything in it. And we've been exploring Florence Price's music over the last several years. Including her, the 5 dances based on the Negro spirituals, African American spirituals, her dances in the cane breaks, and some other pieces, of course, the Adoration and others. So, and like many orchestras and other musical performers worldwide, we're fascinated and so grateful that her music is coming to light. So that's a big part of the concert. And then we're so thrilled to be doing the world premiere of Jeff Lippencott's American Patriot Hymn that the orchestra commissioned in honor of our country's 250th that's coming up. And as many of you know, the orchestra actually recorded this piece in sort of behind closed doors, not in a public performance, back in November, and that is currently in the editing and mastering stages of a commercial recording. So, but this will be the first public performance of it. And we're also very grateful that Jeff could be here because we missed you back in November. Our hearts go out to you and your family. And we were so taken by the Pastureland's Cello Concerto with Zul Bailey that you wrote and the beauty of that piece. And then we were also very grateful to be able to play that Cowboy Suite at our movie music matinee just a few months ago. And so we welcome you. Thank you. So, yeah. So Jeff, since the concert starts with your American Patriot Hymn, maybe we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about the origin of this piece, the inspiration behind it, some of the text that you selected. Maybe you can just go from there. Sure. Yeah.
So, American Patriot Hymn was a sort of a seed idea back in 2012, 2013, and I sketched it out. It was sketched out in 2 movements, and it had, at the time, it didn't have any narration and it didn't have a choir part. That is all the result of the brilliance of Lindsay and your famous music director. So when I came to town to discuss Pastureland's Cello Concerto, Zul and I had, over the course of about 5 years, had honed in on a couple of different orchestras to help us with recording it and performing it and premiering it. So when we got here, we got into these discussions and just sort of as an aside to the conversation, hey, we're coming up on the 250th. Do you have any ideas? And I said, boy, do I have an idea. It's sitting on my desk still. And I explained to them sort of what the sketches were and what it was about. And that it was very patriotic, very hymn-like, which is why it's called American Patriot Hymn. But interestingly enough, the melody was hymn-like, but it had no lyrics, had no choral part to it. And then I don't know whether it's Lindsay or William, but somebody suggested, hey, would you be willing to add a choir or would you be willing to add some narration? And that got my wheels spinning pretty fast. And I was like, well, that's natural. I don't even know why I didn't do that in the first place. So I wound up digging into some texts which I was partially familiar with. Samuel Adams, not only a beer maker, but also a patriot, and he was a poet of some sort. And this poem that I extracted these lyrics from was written around the Revolutionary War era, and it's attributed to him. Now, nobody can totally pin it on him exactly, but it's attributed to him, so I'm just going with that Samuel Adams wrote it, because he did write some poetry at the time, and the content of the poem is definitely right down the alley of what he would normally write. Now, the narration comes from the 1821 speeches, the 45th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, that John Quincy Adams spoke in Washington, D.C. So he had two addresses, one to Congress and then one to the general, I can't remember the society that organized it, but I think it was outdoors in D.C. on 4th of July. And these two excerpts are from those speeches. And they just fit so well with what Samuel Adams was saying some 25 years, 30 years earlier. And so it melted in really nicely. I don't typically write backwards, and this was a real struggle for me. Because typically when I write, the idea's here and then it goes. This was, well, the idea's here, and then I had to sort of come back, circle back, and figure out a way to insert these lyrics, these narrations into a piece that really was already sort of here and sketched out on paper. So what I wound up doing was I had movement 1 and movement 2. I split them apart, put the choral part in the lyrics with the choral piece in the middle. Now that's movement 2. Narration now is 1 and 3, and then choir, so as not to be left out for the finale, finishes up also, so 2, and then finishes up on 3. So there was a little bit of deconstructing, like a deconstructed salad.
It's a wonderful structure that you've created, and actually the way you've integrated the narration and the chorus is brilliant. You would never guess that it wasn't part of the initial inspiration of the piece.
Yeah, that was the difficulty, obviously trying to plug something in, and I'd never done that. I'd never sort of rewritten myself, but it worked, and thanks to the ideas from you guys, I'm happy to finally have a really great finished product.
Yeah. So we're going to have the narrator, Dan Gelder, who some of you might remember when he narrated Lincoln Portrait with us a few years ago. He's coming up to do that. And then we'll have a combined chorus of the Cheyenne Chamber Singers and the UW Collegiate Chorale. So they'll all be on stage with us for the opening of the concert tomorrow night. It's going to be very exciting. We're getting all together for the first time tonight at rehearsal. So it should be really kind of fun. By way of background, your career is very successful writing for television and other things, but your heart these days seems to be more in your symphonic and choral work. Tell us a little bit about how you straddle those two worlds.
Well, so my career is television and film. But I'd say about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I started getting a little bit antsy with my creativity, and I just started tootling around. Something that you may or may not know. I formed a group called the Santa Clarita Philharmonic back in 2011. I got the donations, I got the funding, I went out and I was the board. See, you didn't know that, did you? It's just like, oh, wait a minute. So I went out, got a board, I was the head of the whole thing. We did the fundraising, we did rehearsals, we did an initial concert, I got the venue, went through the whole ball of wax. My problem was threefold. One was, I'm not good with junior high players. So I couldn't help them. I'm not
You're used to the Hollywood studio and studio musicians.
Correct. I'm used to going in and going bam, 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 bam. And a lot of my players were younger. Some were high school. Some were, retired music teachers or people that maybe studied in college and then went on to be accountants, whatever. It was a great volunteer orchestra, but I realized very quickly that I didn't know how to educate. I couldn't teach them how to play better, or I could get them so far, which was about that far, and that was it. But what I did have, I had an oboe player that was the high school orchestra leader, and when I had a couple of shows coming, I had a movie coming, I had all this stuff going on, and I was in a meeting with him, and I said, look, I just don't know if I'm the right person for this. I can't help them. I don't know what to do. Help me. And he said, well, I could take it over. And, he says, I'm a teacher. This is what I do. I would be a natural fit. So I gave it over to them, and it went all the way to COVID, and then COVID sort of shut down.
But you had the
love
of the symphonic,
yes,
writing for symphony orchestra,
correct,
conducting symphony orchestras outside of a studio in LA.
Correct.
And then, you have a number of releases out with choruses, orchestras.
I do it. So what I wound up in that whole scenario was, my idea was to have a community orchestra that I could write for, that could premiere some new works, could also do some existing things. It was somewhere across between, I call it Philharmonic because it was somewhere across between, light classical, like we did the William Tell, stuff like that, and then some of my pieces, and I did some arrangements and some things, stuff that they could play that was accessible. But I felt that was really the match that lit the fire to write Frontier Symphony, and then move on to the Cello Concerto and Grand Teton Suite, and I have sketches that we were talking about. All the sketches. So yeah, so it really lit a fire in me, and then it's come to this.
And a lot of it is inspired. I don't want to be too revealing, but you're also a deeply spiritual person. You've written a lot of choral music that celebrates that side of you. And one of the, I don't know if you're willing to mention about the project that you're just right now in the midst of. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Want to show you at breakfast?
Yeah. Show me some sketches at breakfast.
So I'm in the middle, sort of in the middle of a canonical mass. So I don't know how many of you know what that is, but it's the 5 movements. It's from the Catholic liturgy, but there's a Kyrie, an Agnus Dei, Gloria. There's 5 movements to it. And I'm about 2.5. William's sitting there sight reading it. I'm like, come on, man, you're not going to do that.
Breakfast at Little America.
Yeah,
that's all good.
That's right.
But
yeah,
what's amazing to me is you're writing Kyrie Eleison, and you're the person who wrote the theme to Apprentice and Shark Tank and all these others that have such a different feel and a different vibe to it. I guess it's all in there. I mean,
yeah, it's John Williams said it best many, many years ago. And a composer's a composer. You're not a film composer. You're not a classical. You're a composer. I'm a composer by nature. Now, whether I'm writing Shark Tank, which is great, or whether I'm writing Kyrie, which I think is pretty to do. I love doing it all. I love choral. I love cello concerto. I like writing for kids. For the kids program, or whatever it is. I just enjoy writing. I'm a writer. It's who I am. It's who God made me to be. It's what I wake up in the morning. I've tried to do other stuff. I mean, I've tried to make wine, and I had a pretty good wine too, actually. It was an awards. It really did. Really? It was a pretty decent wine, off my vineyard in LA. Wow. So, no, I've tried other things, and I really enjoy them.
Wow.
Just other things,
No, yeah.
But when I wake up in the morning, I'm a composer, and that's what I am when I go to bed as well. So.
That's wonderful. And the audience has really responded so well to the Pastor Lynch's Cello Concerto. It's a gorgeous piece. And of course, Zool was so wonderful in premiering it, and having it premiered here was a great honor, and then recording it with him is also a great honor. But it's also especially nice this time that we get to see you on stage, conduct your own music.
I'm happy to do that.
It's pretty special when the world premiere happens, but it's even extra special when the composer is the conductor.
Yeah.
That's going to be really, really cool. And Jeff has said that he's willing to answer some of your questions later on, so if you want to think about some questions for near the end of our little hour together, I'm sure he'll be willing to answer some of those. Yeah. And it's also neat that there is this strong Wyoming connection, that you live outside of Jackson and that there is this connection here. And so we're hoping that, this can continue. Yeah.
Fully love it.
Yeah. Thank you. And Michelle, we were just talking about how this isn't your first time in Wyoming, but this is your first time in Cheyenne, I think.
Yeah, it's
Welcome to our first meeting.
Great to be here.
You came here on a good day. If it was a few weeks ago, there would have been 90-mile-an-hour winds. It has been very dry. It's usually a little more green than this, but we'll take the sunshine and the nice weather for you. Maybe you brought it in. I don't know.
That would be the first. Everywhere I've been going, they're like, we've never had weather like this.
It's been the craziest year for that. Well, I am so excited for you to perform with the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra, and these 2 pieces in particular. You bring such an incredible musicality, joy, and positivity to your playing, depth of your playing. You have made it almost like a life's mission to do incredible research on Florence Price and all the music that you do. I mean, you're a scholar, you're a teacher, you're a professor, you're a performer, chamber music, concertos. So welcome. It's a great honor that you're here with us. And
A great honor for me as well, and to work with you again.
Oh, thank you.
Very fun to have this not be the first time. Well, it was kind of funny because both orchestras that I've worked with with you are I flew into Chicago and drove.
She was in Dubuque.
Yes, and in Dubuque, but I flew to Chicago and drove there, and then flew into Denver, and then drove here.
Yeah.
So, and
No speeding ticket this time.
no, so there's a.
Sorry.
It's not as bad as it sounds. It's not quite as bad.
I mean,
So, but it was hilarious because we came in really late to Dubuque
You
from
couldn't even see
Chicago.
the speed signs.
Well, I slightly blamed my husband, which I'm allowed to do. Sorry. Okay, because this is funny. We were maybe 20 minutes away from our Airbnb at that point in Dubuque, and I had been not feeling well. Remember, I had been kind of sick, and I wasn't able. I just came down with something. So I had been sleeping in the back seat with our, what was he, 5-month baby at that time? I have a 10-month-old right now, so it's been a little bit. So it's like, and so we're in the back seat. So my husband he's too tired to make it the rest of the way, so I need to drive, and I'm just sort of this mess. So anyway, I get in the seat, and of course, wherever he stops and where I take over, he had just passed a speed limit sign change.
Oh no.
It had changed to, we had been in a 50, and it was now like a 30 or something.
I know exactly where that is.
And that's where he pulled over, and he didn't tell me anything. I just, and literally immediately, and I got caught.
It's a terrible speed trap.
It was.
Sorry, we're just.
I did better this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have even brought it up.
I know the trauma of it all. Anyway, no, it's really, it's a pleasure to work with you again. I'm very excited to work with your great orchestra here for the first time.
Yeah.
These pieces.
Tell us a little about your background. I know you're based in Philadelphia now. Is that where you were raised too?
No, I actually grew up, I was born in Hendersonville, North Carolina, right outside of Asheville. And when I was about 6, we moved to Florida, and a small town called Avon Park, Florida. It's right in the center of the state, south of Orlando by a little bit. Because my father is actually a music teacher, K through 12 education his whole life, and we grew up Seventh-day Adventist actually, and there were schools connected to that religion that were small, throughout the country, and so we kind of moved where those schools were. And so my dad took over this K through 12 small school, and he did everything, band, choir, steel drums, which was a very, very fun, unique thing that he brought to schools, and being from the islands, Bermuda and travels to Trinidad, so there's connections there. But so he did all these groups, and so I had a very unique upbringing because I played a lot of different instruments. Piano was just one of them, and I started with piano at about 6, 7, but then I immediately did violin. I played in the orchestra, and I played trombone. Really? And and I played tuba at one point because I didn't want to do that in early high school, but my father needed, when your dad's a band director, whatever instrument that's lacking, you're playing tuba. That was hilarious. And so, and I sang in the choir. And so anyway, I literally, between my sisters and I think we covered every instrument category. Like my sister played bassoon and piano, so anyway. So all of this was, it was a really colorful childhood and a lot of music in our house with practicing all these things. But, piano, I was always the most motivated at piano. It was the instrument that I could really show, my best. And what helped is my oldest sister out of 4 girls is also a concert pianist, and so she's 6 years ahead of me, so I was watching her already at a certain level, and I wanted to catch up, and so those things play a part. And now it's very fun when we're not fighting each other, we are playing together. So it's true, I'm sorry, it's 4 girls in this house. We love each other, but anyway, so we have a duo, and we're called the Cann Duo, and so it's fun. We play some concerts together as well. So anyway, it's you got it. Can do, it's fun. It's fun. So so it's a family affair, my whole life. So that was kind of the beginnings there, and then I went off to the Cleveland Institute of Music to study my undergrad, bachelor's and master's, and then Curtis Institute of Music to do a postgrad artist diploma degree, where I'm now a professor as well. So,
and chair of piano, right?
I am not. I have a chair. It does throw people off. I should just say
you're fine. But that's amazing that you're teaching piano at Curtis. I mean, that's like pinnacle.
Really,
basically.
no, it is. I mean, it's daunting, if anything, because like, where do you go from there? But but it's different because Curtis, if you know about that conservatory, it's one of the most selective conservatories for, especially specifically focuses on classical music. We have like a 4% accept. It's like we have 150 students in the whole school.
Everybody's on full ride.
Everybody's on full ride. It's a great, if you're there, you're going to get great attention for sure. But it's also really, it's a little demoralizing as well from the teacher point of view, right? Because when we do these auditions, we hear so much talent, and then maybe in a given year, like this year we had more than we usually do. Like we're happy when they're like, there's 4 openings for piano. Whoa, that's a really good year. Like we often have 2, and we'll have like 150 to 200 people.
Oh my goodness.
It's the worst. I hate breaking it down. And so I will admit that it's a mixed bag. Of course, we love, and I love teaching. I mean, with my father being this teacher, I've always been
that family.
Yeah, I've always.
And you're also at Manhattan School in New York.
Yeah,
So you're up there,
exactly.
like you said,
Every 2 weeks I'm there. Yeah, we're on the road. I like to joke that my 10-month-old has more airline miles than probably. He's just on a plane, and he's great.
Well, he's destined for music, perhaps. We'll see. Yeah. Well, and so it's amazing that with all of that, you have so much time for concertizing, recording, and all the chamber music that you do. And like I mentioned before, the research that you're putting into these performances. Tell us a little bit about your fascination with Florence Price specifically, because we love her music.
Yes, I know. I mean, my journey with her started in 2016, actually, when I was introduced to this piano concerto. And so this was the first piece I knew of hers. When I was asked to play it, I was just, very intrigued as to who she was as well. And, the music was sent to me, and I fell in love with this concerto. You will too if you haven't heard it. I mean, she packs a lot in about 20 minutes or less. And it is called concerto in 1 movement, but it feels like 3 movements, there's 3 parts to it. And, it tells such a story. I mean, she was, a very quick synopsis of her life, if you don't know, and many of you may by now know a little bit, was that she was born in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1887, child prodigy, went off to New England Conservatory of Music to study composition, piano, and organ as well. She grew up in the church and was very religious and played organ, I think, a lot in churches throughout her life. But when she went and finished her schooling and other pursuits, when she came back to Little Rock to start a family and kind of live a life, we're getting to the 1920s. And so with segregation taking root, she, and many, of course, as we know in history, many Black artists of many kind, made their way to cities like Harlem, New York, but actually lots of classical musicians went to Chicago. And there was just opportunity there and acceptance. So
and a community.
And a
people like Marian
100%,
Anderson.
Yes.
And
absolutely. So that of course, that was actually where the National Association of Negro Musicians, which is a very important organization, still exists. That was a supportive, place really for musicians of color. It was founded in Chicago. So again, like you said, the community of people really were there. So when she got there, she immediately made many connections with other composers and musicians, but she entered this big competition with her first symphony that the Chicago Symphony was sort of, in conjunction with. And when she won the top prize, Frederick Stock, who was a conductor at the time, had been very interested in trying to promote more Black artists, both as performers and composers. So he premiered her first symphony with the Chicago Symphony in 1932, and she made history as the first Black female, African-American female to ever have a piece performed by a major symphony orchestra. And she was there, got to go up for applause at the end. There was a great article written about her. It was the anniversary of the World's Fair. Yeah. And guess who else was in the audience? Because we'll be making this connection too. Gershwin. Gershwin was actually there. He had played the night before for these special concerts for that World's Fair anniversary, and got to meet her. So anyway, that was very cool to hear. But what began as this moment, 1930s was her most fruitful decade of compositions, from like her piano concerto, her 4 symphonies pretty much during that time. Like a lot of her major works were in that period and are obviously inspired by, this success. But sadly, she passed in the 1950s. Basically, there was only the Chicago Symphony was the only major symphony in her lifetime that ever played any of her music. And this was not for lack of trying. So, knowing...
World War II happened, and that put a major dent in it. Like, people were focused on other things.
Yes, and she, and I think another, of course, the other side of it is women's rights. You had the fact that women as composers in America weren't being taken as seriously in the 20s and 30s and like trying to make that push forward. And so she knew it, she called it in her writings a handicap of my race and gender. Like, you're not going to take me seriously. I wish you would just look at the music, So she was really, what I'm so grateful for is she wrote over 200 pieces. A lot of them were not published, but she still put, what you said was so potent about, I live and breathe, I wake up, this is all, I can't help but write, right? And that is so important to hear, right? Because that's what I believe of in musicians and especially in composers, that like this is your bread and water, right? And so this was Florence Price, like regardless of the setbacks, she could not help but write, and so she did. And so here we go, we fast forward to 2009,
yes,
and she's died. Her music, only a portion's published, so all you have is maybe that one manuscript she wrote out or whatever. And a lot of it was lost. People didn't know where a lot of the music was. And then in her old summer home,
name at all.
she was not. No, some people that knew, from the past. So anyway, this dilapidated house, and they're like cleaning out the dirty attic kind of thing. And in the boxes are the names Florence Price, and these old, seemingly from the 50s, had been sitting in these boxes.
They were only discovered in 2009.
Yes.
Wow. Left behind as manuscripts.
Yes.
Never published. The virtual mother lode treasure trove of all of her masterpieces.
Like this piano concerto,
Yes.
of course, was one of them, and some other symphonies. So much.
Yeah.
It was a story that New York Times talked about, and this helped essentially get people talking about her again. But I think that what's so important to sort of wrap this up is that for me, it started from the music. And I talk about this a lot, that like the history is fascinating. There's a lot of stories. We could spend hours and days talking about all sorts of figures in history that many of us don't know about, that we continue to get to know, right? For various reasons. But for me, that's one very fascinating thing. But it starts with the music, right? The music has to speak to you, has to speak to me if I'm good, and that's what it did. I always tell people don't just think this is a good story. This is a great story. If anything, it's an even more powerful story because of how good this music is.
Yes.
And that when she was advocating for herself, literally, her argument that I feel like you're not really paying enough attention because of these, outside factors. You see me as this black woman that you're not going to take as seriously right now. You're not really focused on the music. And to me, this argument was so important because it really is that powerful.
Yes.
You will see, it really is that beautiful. It really is that American. When we talk about American music, this is such an inspiring program from every piece on this program. But I always, as a black woman, but I try to transcend race when I think about our country. I say it because we can't ignore race, but to unify us, we have to understand that music is the most unifying thing that there absolutely ever could be. And it is beyond all of these little labels we put on people. It's like, we live in this country, we're proud to be in this country, and this music is music of our country. And it's music we should all know. It's music we should all learn. It's history that we should all know. And this is the kind of, these stories I think can bring us together. So for me, I just love to share her music and her story because it's something to be proud of. to say that this is something that our country produced.
Absolutely. And it also says a lot. Thank you for those inspirational words. So awesome and so passionate. It also says a lot that this piece can be performed alongside such a masterpiece as Rhapsody in Blue and hold its own and then some. And people are going to be talking about the Florence Price after the concert as much or more as the Gershwin.
Exactly.
Now, I just wonder, would you be willing to demonstrate a little of the Price on the piano there?
Absolutely.
And maybe the Gershwin too?
Sure, no, you won't
We all know the Gershwin.
I'm gonna save that. I don't want to give that away because I can play some mean Gershwin. You have to come to the concert for that.
Yes.
But I'll give them
I'll hold that
a
back.
couple of little
Yeah.
Florence Price stuff.
All right, perfect. Great. Thank you.
So as I mentioned, you have the three sections in this concerto, even though it's running as one fluid piece. And so I'm going to start kind of each section because what is so fascinating is that she starts in the first section and it's very romantic. There's like a big cadenza that the pianist gets to do, and so I'm going to play a little of that. And then the second section, it's like this beautiful spiritual. It really is. A lot of people ask me, it's like, oh, is that like a known spiritual with words? And I was like, no, but it feels like, much like this piece, it feels like, of course, it could have words. And it is a duet between piano and oboe. And to start out, and then the orchestra comes in. And then it breaks out into the third section, which you do not see coming. I'll never forget the smile I had on my face when I was reading it for the first time. I was like, what? I didn't see this coming. Totally breaks out into this dance. It's called a juba dance, similar to ragtime a little bit, and it was an African dance that was popularized in the South. So believe it or not, you're getting all this in one piece.
One compact short piece.
So I'm just going to give you little snippets of these sections. Williams, yeah, you know. No, that's why I said, like, it's just American music at its core, 100%. And then some ragtime.
Every time I get to perform some Crisis music, I'm always so, like you said, the music is of such quality.
Yes.
And every piece has a spiritual depth.
Yes.
And every piece recognizes her background and her heritage.
It
There's
does.
always, it seems like there's a lot of, African American spirituals.
There is idioms and stuff, and
everything.
she always incorporated these, dances and songs and folk tunes and all that, just she brought in her upbringing, her culture, her love of God, her life story, the heart and soul in this music is undeniable. And it's, the only thing missing is I wish I could have met her.
I know.
Because I just, that's why we're so lucky. It's so wonderful to have these moments with composers that are here today, for you to not only present, for this piece to be presented, for you to conduct it, and for us to really see the way that you feel this piece you wrote is such a treat. And I do my best to really bring to life the way I feel she would want it to be.
You bring it to life, and then some. My goodness. And you actually, I was reading that you kind of created a chamber version of this, the piano sextet, is that right? Tell us
Yes.
about
So
that.
actually that was earlier.
Oh,
now,
yes. Okay.
now we don't perform it as much now that they sort of, long story short, when this was found in those boxes, there was also a lot of questions at the time of the rights to the music. They weren't actually able to find relatives of hers. It took them a bit because with married name changes and all this stuff. So they eventually did. They ended up finding, she had 2 daughters, one passed, unfortunately a little young, and then the other one had kids, and that was the line they found. And so then the rights that got taken over, they wanted to mostly focus on the actual concerto, which was great. But at the beginning, when we didn't have that, I was trying to get this piece, I wanted to get it out there more. I wanted there to be more performances, and it's such, you'll see even with orchestra, the way it's written, and I was playing a lot of these parts, you can have a smaller kind of a group instrumentation and still bring it to life. And so we made a sextet version of it and did a lot of great performances with it. I've done it a couple times since then, but I mean, of course, with orchestra is the best. So.
Yes. And the orchestra part is really interesting too. There's a lot of great, in addition, especially that use of the oboe, but there are solos in other sections that are really important. It's a really nice.
There is, you'll see, I mean, if you love this, then you'll see just how great of a symphonic writer she is as well in the way this all, it at times does feel like chamber music, the way that she writes the piano part with the orchestra. But it just, it does, really takes you on a journey. And I love it because we have, this is my brain for a moment. It's the second half starts with Price and then Gershwin.
Yes.
That's what I thought. I was like, just to be sure. So the end, as you heard, of the Price, with this dance, then going right into Gershwin is a really wonderful transition in that sense of styles. Because of course in Rhapsody you're gonna hear all sorts of different dances, to Charleston and many other things. But it's, for me, what I love about Rhapsody in Blue, other than the fact that we all love it, right? Because there are just so many great melodies and it's so fun. But for performers, for pianists that do that piece, it's a piece where we just have so much freedom. Yes. Right? There's so much, every pianist, and if you've heard this, people tell me, oh, I've heard this 50 times. Well, guess what? You have never heard it the way I'm about to play it. I promise you that. I'm just being honest with you because
It's for real. I was blown away too.
But hey, because that's what it should be, right?
Yes.
Like, even as Gershwin himself was an improviser,
He did.
Yes,
the first
and just like, and I never play it the same way. I always do a little something. Because, it's more fun that way. And so even in Florence Price's music, there's even a freedom of rubato and form as well. There's something about that I think, because people will ask me, I do these two pieces a lot, and I pair them a lot together, and, oh man, you must be so sick of this, and I'm like, no, really, I'm not, because every time I do them, it just still feels fresh. It's still like I'm still living in the moment with these pieces. They don't have the same kind of strict, I would say, rules as like maybe a Mozart concerto, which again, I love playing Mozart, but I'm a little bit more confined to like style and structure and form, and it's like, okay, I've got to make sure this comes out this way every single time, and it's a little bit more strict for me, which is great, but I can imagine if I had to keep doing that over and over, I'd be like, okay, enough of this. But the fact that I can just have this kind of fun, and I don't get sick of it.
Yeah, I can see that. And I mean, like you said, you bring something new to it each time, which is so great. You're exploring it.
Exactly.
And these particular pieces give you some freedom to do that, too.
That's absolutely.
A lot of people don't realize that when Gershwin wrote Rhapsody in Blue, the term rhapsody in music had a specific kind of meaning. It meant that this was like a fantasia or a free-formed piece that didn't prescribe to some of the more strict formal musical genres like symphony, concertos, sonata forms, and things of that nature. So by its very nature, it's kind of rhapsodic, meaning that it has episodes, and it's not necessarily, it does tie together beautifully, actually.
It does.
But it was a little bit more of a freestyle. And part of the reason of that was that he had to write the whole piece in like 3 weeks. He saw the
There's different stories, but apparently it's mostly that he forgot that he agreed to do it.
He agreed to write a concerto with Paul Whiteman in the summer. And then he sort of forgot about it, he got busy with other projects. He opened the newspaper, some accounts say, the New York Tribune on January 3rd or January 4th, one of those, they say, and it was the announcement of the concert happening at New York Aeolian Hall, this experiment in music, for February something. It was literally like 4 or 5 weeks away, and he hadn't written a note. And it said in the New York paper, featuring a new concerto by George Gershwin. And he freaked out, of course, as anybody would. He called Paul Whiteman, the band director who was organizing the whole thing that day, and said, well, what? And they said, okay, well, just write what you can, it doesn't have to be a strict concerto. It can be more rhapsodic, hence the Rhapsody.
And look what we have.
Yes, amazing, brilliant piece.
I have a story for you that's a little similar to this, but not quite. I won't tell you the orchestra, but it was a particularly busy season of concerts. And I had, like, in a row, I was performing Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto with these different orchestras. So, I had put it in my head, there was these 3 orchestras within, like, that month or something. And in my head, I was playing Rachmaninoff 2 with all of them.
Right.
In my head.
Uh-oh.
Somehow, and in this particular case, in my calendar, it would we've changed this now, where the rep is very clear, but it would say the orchestra, but the rep was a little hidden, but I was like, no, it's Rachmaninoff. So anyway, I was just, I was ready, and I got a message. It's just so, I get this message, I wake up to a message on my phone, and they're like, Michelle, I am so excited to see you in a couple weeks with Tchaikovsky, man, and I'm like, I died. I just remember, I was like, Tchaikovsky, what is he talking about? I haven't even started learning that piece, because what it was is I was going to be playing Tchaikovsky Concerto for the first time, in my mind, in April, and this was like November. And so I had put aside when I would start working on it. And I was like, oh, we can't wait to hear it. And I look at and I Google my name in this orchestra, and like, Tchaikovsky Concerto, and I'm like, freaked out. In the end, this is very lucky. I wasn't able to do it. My story is not like that. It's a huge concerto. No, we found another way. So my managers talked with the conductor, and we went through, and then here was the great part. So they had, it was a whole like Russian composer concert.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's a rock too.
Rachmaninoff's still Russian. And so suddenly Michelle was playing rock too, so you'll never know. It's been changed since then. You'll have to search to see where was she supposed to play.
And probably the only piano concerto more popular than Tchaikovsky.
That was the thing. No, seriously, it's rock too.
Everybody was happy.
Everybody was still happy. Like it was like really good. But I was like contemplating. I didn't know what Oh my god. So it's funny as you tell that story.
You can totally relate. Of course.
Whew,
Yes.
never again. I tell you. But it can happen to the best of us.
Yes. Well, it's amazing that Gershwin was able to write this incredible piece, but also that he captured the moment, right? There was something about New York City in the 1920s, and he created this piece that captured the essence of that time, but also somehow it's timeless. It doesn't just sound like the 1920s. It sounds like America today. And he even said it. There was something about our national pep in the music, and there's something about our melting pot in this music. He wrote it. A lot of it was written, very quickly in his mind. But he did have to take the train one day. It was a previously scheduled engagement from New York to Boston. On that train ride, the clickety clack of the train actually inspired a lot of the sort of sub-themes of the piece. And in his mind, on the train ride, he kind of developed the whole overall picture of it. Architecturally, but also some of the like it's inspired by trains. We are a train city. We know about that, right? So there's something really
bumpy
cool.
trains back then.
They were bumpy. Yeah, we don't have as much passenger trains this year, but we're all about trains here. You probably didn't know the Union Pacific is like right here. Yeah. Started the city, really. So that's a kind of a cool thing too. That's a really neat connection. But I love that he in his writing about the piece, he even said there was something about the melting pot of America, our national pep. I love that quote. And our like this American spirit and optimism in this piece. And it's just it still rings true to everybody still today. It's so wonderful. Now the other thing is about the title, not just the word Rhapsody, but let's talk about the word blue. How did he come up with that? So, of course, it has a jazzy element, right? This is one of the greatest examples of symphonic jazz in a sense. And we'll have another great example of it with the Ellington Harlem on the first half of the program. A very different kind of example of symphonic jazz. But it didn't just have to do with the blues. Gershwin was actually a huge fan of art, and at the time they had recently seen an exhibition of Whistler's music, or not music, his art, his paintings, and there were things like Nocturne in bronze and gold, and other things where it was like untitled in a certain color. And having just gone to a big opening of some of those artworks, he decided to just call this Rhapsody in Blue, almost inspired by Whistler's paintings. It's interesting. So
I think you're giving him more credit. I think he was running out of time, and he was like, "This seems like a good idea." Yeah, that's what he was like, "I don't know what to call this." Actually, I just saw that art.
Yes, I bet you're right. And then it was fascinating when you said, because you've been there, you've had to title pieces that you wrote.
By the way, I think Gershwin's whining just a little bit. Has he ever gotten a call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon saying, "Hey, we're going into NBC tomorrow, we need a main title theme"?
Oh.
All I hear is whining. That's great. It's true.
So yeah, you probably have still a lot of stories to tell. A lot of things are last minute there. I think.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. There's nothing that's early. It's just, can't you call me 2 days ahead?
Interesting.
Oh, and by the way, do you have any live instruments you can put on it? Oh, sure, yeah, let me just fly and get an orchestra for you.
That's great. Well, it's interesting when you
Not
talk
to
about...
take credit away from that.
No. It is sort of a mythological version, but the real life is that he was in a big hurry.
That is cool. That's very cool.
It's neat that he heard the performance of the Piano Concerto in One Movement when Price herself performed it in the 30s. Because there's also an interesting thing that at that performance of the world premiere of Rhapsody...
Symphony.
Oh, it was
He
the
heard the symphony, not
okay.
her performance.
Okay, that's right. At the premiere of Rhapsody in Blue in 1924 in New York, there were such luminaries in the audience as people like Rachmaninoff and Jascha Heifetz, luminaries in the classical world, because this was billed as an experiment in modern music. People thought this was about Stravinsky or things like that, but it was about blending the worlds of blues and jazz with symphonies. And of course, Rhapsody in Blue was like the hit of the night. But many people have said that they think Rachmaninoff came away from that night with the idea of perhaps one day writing a rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, which came much later. But not much later, but maybe 10 years later or so, that Rhapsody in Blue may have inspired one of his greatest piano concerto pieces, his Rhapsody in Blue Paganini. So that's neat.
I'll give you that story.
Okay. All right. How many fun tales can we tell you? The background of classical music is so full of these amazing stories and personalities and incredible people. Yeah, it is. It's great. I know we don't have too much more time with you, but do you have some questions for Michelle or Jeff? And I know I've cheated talking about the Ellington. We have this wonderful tone parallel, is what he called it, like a tone poem, but a musical vignette of, more than a vignette, a musical depiction of the city that really brought him to great fame. When he moved from Washington, D.C. to Harlem, and then when his band was at the Cotton Club, it really helped him make a name for himself. And some of his greatest music was written during that time, but many people don't realize that he wasn't just the greatest jazz master ever in America. He was a great film composer, ballet composer, symphonic composer. He wrote an opera. And so this is also a tribute to his many contributions to American music, that I knew that in this season of all American composers that we're doing in Cheyenne, that we had to have some Duke Ellington on the season. Just as much as we had to have Gershwin and Copland and Bernstein and Ives and things like that. So the Ellington is amazing. And it has 5 saxophones. Rhapsody in Blue has 3, which is a lot. But the Ellington Harlem has 5. It's going to be so fun. It's going to be great. But do you have some questions for Michelle or Jeff? It's such a great opportunity to visit with you guys and share the stage with both of you. It's amazing.
I had the same exact experience at the junior high. You guys don't ask very many questions. I did. I went to the Casey Junior High School this morning, and they all looked at me as well. We talked about so.
That's so
funny. Okay. There we go. I'm totally kidding.
You might not realize it, but all of our guest artists with the Cheyenne Symphony always do at least one school visit when they're here.
Really
and so we really appreciate that you do that. Jeff, we know that you've made visits to the LCCC and others. So yeah, we had a question in the back.
So would you tell us what composers have influenced you, Jeff? And then what pianists were instrumental in your development?
Oh, yeah.
So I guess for
me, it would be hard not,
We talked about this.
William and I were talking about this morning. It's hard not to have Copland as a, classically speaking, as one of those. And obviously Gershwin, more, I would say more, don't take this wrong, pop side of orchestra.
Yeah.
And then of course, my tenure growing up was all John Williams, so I mean, all the John Williams scores were very influential when I was growing up, because Star Wars came out in 177, Jaws in 75. So all of that led right into it. Don't think I wrote Shark Tank based on Jaws. That was actually Star Wars. That was the only caveat when they came to us. It says, this cannot sound like John Williams. We're going to get sued. It doesn't sound like
It doesn't at all.
So pianist, for me, when I was younger, I was inspired by, which I'm still inspired by. I guess it was just names that I still have. Martha Argerich, fascinated me beyond belief. Although I realized that was, now I get it, when her tempos are insane.
Yes.
And I was like, I'll never play it that fast. And I was right, I'll never play it that fast. But anyway, and then another big inspiration for me growing up, or at least through college, was Richard Good. And I'll tell you this because there's so many names. For me, I've always been inspired by pianists that essentially can transcend the physicality of what they're doing at the instrument, right? Where it's like, sure, it's great that, I tell students this all the time, it's like, okay, it's great that you can play so technically well and you can do all these great things, but what is the music what's the story you're trying to tell? Like, what are you really pulling out of this music that's going to make me think more deeply about it, And so a lot of these names as I grew up, Daniel Barenboim and Murray Pariah, I loved him. You know, you would hear these recordings of, you know, Chopin concertos and Beethoven sonatas and all these things. And that's what I aspired to be able to kind of achieve, you know. And so I would say that, yeah, a lot of those names were and still are, you know, inspirations to me and like what I hope to be as a pianist too, young students.
Oh, you
coming up.
absolutely are. You pull the music out, you tell stories. It's amazing what you do. And you do with your music. You're telling stories with incredible harmonies and just a beautiful orchestration. Lots of storytelling from both of you. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. It's more than just notes on a page. It's more than just pretty sounds. Music has this incredible meaning and it touches someplace so deep and that we can't even really describe it in words. Yeah.
And in this case, it's a partnership, which I'm so glad to be with you again, because you are also, as a conductor, that musical. And that's what you bring out of the orchestra. And so, to me, that makes such the difference, right? Is that like when you're, as a soloist, I have that control, but, you know, a conductor can work either with you or against you, really, truly, you know? And then, you know, the orchestra is, you know, you're the connection there, you know, from the soloist to the orchestra. And so when that's right, when they're moving with you in the music, as I feel that you do, then we all come together. So I'm very excited for you guys to see that.
Yeah, I feel the same way that as a conductor and a composer with the orchestra, through a certain set of circumstances in my own life, but the orchestra really came around me from a distance, and it created a bond. And you know, I just, you know, same thing with the conductor.
Yes.
As a composer has with orchestra, and a conductor has with his
Exactly
players.
right.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jeff, I was watching your face as you watched the show play, and I wondered how much a performance influences your music and when.
The performance influences my music.
Yeah.
You know, I was actually just lifting all the chords.
That makes sense. Those progressions,
She does a lot of amazing
This is a
chords,
D, or there's a
lot
D
of
minor,
fun.
that's an augment.
Such a composer
wasn't
would do.
D, wasn't it?
You're right.
Forrest Price
absolutely.
had such an incredible
I have to get
education,
into
but
this
then
real quick, because I have no idea
oh,
any of this work
Right.
that even existed. I have to.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to hook me into some of these scores.
I will, absolutely, because I will tell you that her progressions, her choral progressions, and especially her slower music is like.
I mean, the
like, I just
spiritual
can't
was
get-
so
spiritual.
cool, but I really got into. I was like thinking Ralph Vaughan Williams there, and so much.
Oh, I know, right? Absolutely, no.
Okay,
That's so fun.
so I'm sorry. No, I was digging the chord.
I love that. That
I was
is so
analyzing
great.
all the progressions.
I love that so
I may
much.
use them. I don't know.
thank you for your question. Anything else? Yeah. Well, thank you again, all of you, for being here. Would you please join me in thanking our wonderful guests?
And then if you just stay put for 1 second, Jerry.